Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Everybody's been so locked in on Stefon Diggs and Brandon Aiyuk that an entire wave of talent has basically snuck in through the side door. 3 more Pro Bowl wide receivers just got connected to the Washington Commanders over the last few days, and not a single one of them is named Diggs or Aiyuk. We're talking about a former 5-time All-Pro who was just playing a few miles away in Baltimore, a 6-time Pro Bowler with a direct line into the Commanders' coaching staff, and a game-breaking speedster who might be the single highest upside receiver on the entire open market, if his knee cooperates. So buckle up, because this is a 3-name rabbit hole, and by the end of it, you might actually change your mind about who Washington should be chasing. Welcome back to Commanders Focus. Let's break it all down. Let's start with the name that dropped first this week, DeAndre Hopkins. Sports Illustrated insider Jason LaCanfora floated Hopkins as a fit for Washington, and his reasoning wasn't just about talent. Hopkins spent last season playing practically in Washington's backyard with the Baltimore Ravens, close enough that the geography basically writes its own headline. According to LaCanfora, people around the league genuinely believe Hopkins would jump at the chance to catch passes from Jayden Daniels. And even though Hopkins wasn't heavily featured in Baltimore's offense, his per-target numbers downfield stayed strong. He's not going to blow by anybody at this stage of his career. But the man still has elite hands, he can shield defenders off with his body in tight coverage, and he can still snag the occasional highlight reel. One-handed grab that makes you forget how many mileage-heavy seasons he's got on his tires. He's played on winning teams, he understands what a playoff run actually demands. And according to LaCanfora, he'd come without nearly the same price tag or off-field noise that follows a guy like Stefon Diggs around. Now, let's actually sit with the numbers for a second, because the story here is a lot more interesting than just aging veteran hanging on. Hopkins is 34 years old, and yes, that puts him firmly on the back 9 of his career. He hasn't been named an All-Pro since the 2020 season, and if we're being honest, that's a long time ago in wide receiver years. But last season, something clicked. Hopkins posted his best Pro Football Focus grade since that last All-Pro campaign, coming in at 81.3 while playing for Baltimore. That's not a small detail. That's a 34-year-old receiver quietly playing some of his best football in half a decade. He also spent time with the Kansas City Chiefs a couple years back during their Super Bowl run, so this is a guy who has bounced around contenders and understands exactly what winning football looks like up close. He hit 1,000 receiving yards as recently as 2023, and even in a limited role with the Ravens last year, just 330 yards and 2 touchdowns, he was remarkably efficient, averaging 15 yards every time the ball actually found him. And when it mattered, in the biggest moments, Hopkins was still making those ridiculous one-handed highlight reel catches with defenders draped all over him. So here's the honest verdict on Hopkins. He's lost a gear, he's not separating from anybody down the field the way he used to, and he's not going to be your big play, take the top off the defense guy anymore. But put him in the red zone, near the goal line, in a contested catch situation, and he is still one of the most dangerous hands in football. He'd be a savvy, professional, low-drama chain mover for whoever signs him. That said, and I want to be very clear about this, I would not take Hopkins over Stefon Diggs. LaCanfora's entire pitch basically boils down to sign Hopkins instead of Diggs, because Diggs comes with baggage. But ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported this week that around the league, teams genuinely aren't worried about the off-field noise surrounding Diggs at this point. Yes, his brother has some ongoing legal trouble. Yes, Diggs himself dealt with a legal situation earlier this offseason, but he was acquitted, found not guilty on every charge. And coming off a season where he put up 1,000+ yards as the #1 receiver on a Super Bowl team, it sounds like the league has already moved past the drama narrative, even if some media members haven't. Given a direct choice between Diggs and Hopkins, it's not close for me. I'm taking Diggs every single time. Now let's move to name number 2, because this is where things start getting genuinely interesting for Washington fans. Keenan Allen. Allen spent last season with the Los Angeles Chargers, where he spent the vast majority of his career. And ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported this week that league sources have specifically connected Allen to the Commanders. What's fascinating here is how Allen's own thinking seems to have shifted. Fowler explained that in previous free agency cycles, word around the league was that Allen wanted to stay out west close to home, and he did exactly that. This time around, that same certainty isn't there anymore. That doesn't guarantee he's ready to relocate across the country, but it does suggest the door is open in a way it wasn't before. And according to Fowler, Allen has reached a stage in his career where he trusts that his game will age gracefully, even without elite top-end speed. He's never been a burner. He's a route technician who wins with precision instead of pure athleticism, and that style tends to hold up well deep into a receiver's 30s. Fowler also pointed out that pairing with a talented young quarterback is genuinely appealing to Allen at this point in his career, and Washington happens to have exactly that in Jayden Daniels. Let's run through what Allen actually brings to the table. He's 34 years old, built more like a bigger-bodied slot receiver for most of his career, although over the last couple seasons he's actually lined up outside more often than in the slot. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, though it's worth noting he hasn't made that list since 2023. Last season, his PFF grade landed at a solid but unspectacular 76. He started every game he played but couldn't quite crack 800 receiving yards. Still, over the past 2 seasons split between the Chicago Bears and the Chargers, he's remained a genuinely effective piece of an offense. His last truly dominant year came back in 2023 with the Chargers, when he topped 1,200 yards and scored 7 touchdowns. Even now, though, Allen is one of the best pure route runners in the league. He's a technician in every sense of the word, the kind of receiver who consistently finds soft spots on slants and short routes precisely when an offense desperately needs to move the chains and keep a drive alive. And his versatility, the ability to line up outside or in the slot depending on what a game plan calls for, only adds to his appeal. Here's the detail that makes Allen's connection to Washington feel like more than just a rumor, though. His former head coach with the Chargers, Anthony Lynn, is currently the running backs coach for the Washington Commanders. If there's any team on the East Coast that Allen has an existing relationship with, it's this one. And if Washington ends up missing out on Stefon Diggs entirely, Keenan Allen genuinely looks like one of the strongest fallback options at wide receiver, potentially stepping right into a true number 2 role alongside Terry McLaurin. Now, onto the third name, and honestly, this might be the biggest one of the bunch, Tyreek Hill. Fowler reported this week that the Commanders are specifically looking for a legitimate speed threat at wide receiver, and if that's genuinely the priority, there's really nobody else on the market who fits that description better than Hill, at least when he's fully healthy. That single detail might actually explain why Washington hasn't already pulled the trigger on Stefon Diggs, since Diggs, for all his strengths, simply isn't built as a burner at this stage of his career. But there's a massive asterisk hanging over Hill's name, and it's a serious one. He's coming off a brutal injury from last season. A torn ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus, all suffered in the same play during a Thursday night game in Week 4. That is about as catastrophic a knee injury as a receiver can suffer, and it's worth pointing out that it's remarkably similar to the injury Brandon Aiyuk dealt with, a name Commanders fans have been tracking obsessively all offseason already. Hill also isn't young anymore. He's 32, turning 33 sometime during this upcoming season. He's a 5-time first-team All-Pro, but he hasn't earned that honor since his explosive 2023 season in Miami. And realistically, he had already started to slow down some before the injury even happened. Here's the uncomfortable truth about a player like Hill, though. His entire game is built on pure explosiveness and top-end speed. That's the exact type of athletic trait that a devastating multi-ligament knee injury threatens to take away, whether partially or completely. We already saw something similar play out with Aiyuk last year, who didn't suit up at all after his injury, and that absence looked like it was as much about frustration with his situation in San Francisco as it was about the actual physical rehab timeline. It's entirely possible Hill follows a similar path, maybe not seeing the field in a meaningful way until partway through the coming season, if a team even wants to take that risk in the first place. That uncertainty is very likely why Hill remains unsigned right now, sitting out there on the open market weeks before camps open. It's also worth noting that the overall pace of receiver signings around the league has been unusually slow this offseason, which might mean several teams are simply watching Hill's recovery closely before deciding what other veteran option to pursue. So here's a real theory worth considering. Maybe the reason the Commanders haven't signed Stefon Diggs yet isn't about money, and it isn't about off-field concerns. Maybe it's simply that they're quietly hoping Tyreek Hill gets fully cleared before the season starts, because if he can return anywhere close to his peak form, he represents a legitimately higher ceiling than anything else available. Pairing a healthy Hill with Terry McLaurin would give Jayden Daniels a genuine game-breaking element to go along with his deep ball ability, something that could turn Washington's passing attack into one of the most explosive units in the entire league. Now let's be completely fair about the trade-offs here, because this isn't a simple, clean decision. Diggs offers the higher floor. He's got fewer question marks physically right now, more certainty about what you're actually getting on the field week to week. Hill offers a dramatically higher ceiling, but with real, legitimate injury risk attached to it. If you force me to rank my actual preferences for Washington's wide receiver room today, here's exactly how I'd stack it. If Tyreek Hill is genuinely healthy and can return anywhere near his old form, he's my #1 target. Full stop. That kind of explosiveness paired with Terry McLaurin is simply a different tier of upside. But if there's real doubt about his health, I'd sign Stefon Diggs today without hesitation. Given his consistency, his precise route running, his reliable hands, and, honestly, the fact that this is personal for him as a DMV native who clearly wants to be here. If somehow neither of those two works out, I'd be pushing hard for a trade for Kayshon Boutte, who had a strong season last year and already has real chemistry built up with Jayden Daniels from their time together at LSU. And if none of those three options materialize, I'd take Keenan Allen over DeAndre Hopkins. Although realistically, either veteran would still represent a solid professional addition to this receiver room. So here's the question I want you to answer down in the comments. Between a fully healthy Tyreek Hill and Stefon Diggs, who's the better fit for this Washington Commanders offense? I already know there's a huge chunk of this fan base that's completely locked in on Diggs, and honestly, I understand exactly why. But I want to hear your actual reasoning. Type SD if you're riding with Diggs, or TH if Tyreek Hill's upside has you convinced. And if you're the kind of fan who wants to know the second any of these dominoes fall, whether it's Diggs finally signing, Hill passing a physical, Keenan Allen packing his bags for the East Coast, or a surprise trade for Kayshon Boutte, this is exactly the channel you need to be locked into. So do me a favor, smash that like button if you've got strong feelings about who Washington should be chasing. Drop your prediction in the comments, because I genuinely read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because when Washington finally makes their move at wide receiver, you're going to want to hear about it here first. Until next time, Commanders fans, hail to the Commanders.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.